It's 5:30. So Leslie, would you call the roll?
Josh Altum and Chris Pugh.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee.
Here.
Linda Rhodes.
Here.
And Chad Wandell.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right. So I think the first item on our work session is the budget again. So George, you want to lead this off with here on the budget discussion? George? 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 *6, George. There you go.
All right, now?
Yep.
I have to start all over?
Yes.
Sorry. Technology. We don't have a formal presentation on the budget, but I had sent you earlier in the afternoon an email that essentially was trying to respond to most of the questions that any of the council members have asked us about since we had the work session on the budget. So we have provided that email to you, and hopefully it responds to your question. I know, Linda, there was one question that you had that we had not yet determined what the answer is with regard to whether or not the EDC owes the city any money. We're not certain that that's even the case. We do budget some administrative charges from the EDC to the city, but those were included in the budget itself. And we'll continue to look and see if we can determine what discussions we might have had about EDC owing the city money. The other questions related to personnel and compensation and the potential to save money through furloughs or through some changes in fire services. I want to particularly thank Brian King for being here tonight. He's our acting fire chief at the moment, and as he and I visited at some length about potential cost savings if in fact we were to try to contract or use a third party for emergency medical services or ambulance. And while there could be some savings if we did that, there's some downside to that. And we can get into whatever level of discussion the council would like to do tonight. But other than the questions that you asked and that we sent an email on, Mayor, most of the staff is here and we're ready to answer any other questions that we can. And as I've said before, we'll have this item posted on any council meeting that you have between now and the time to adopt the budget.
George, can you share the figures that you sent to us on the screen? Because I know there's a lot of people on this meeting that we could see the numbers.
I am actually not sure if I can do that or not. I can. What you're talking about, the memo I sent today?
Yeah.
I can put that on my screen. I'm just not sure I know how to put it on yours. So I'm assuming you cannot see that?
Well, I can see it. In fact, here you go. I just shared it. So there were some questions here, right? Everybody sees that now? Yeah. So if you were to furlough everybody, right, George, if I got this 1 day a week, that would save you $366,000. Well, $367,000.
That's for civilian employees other than public safety. You'd really need to add those two charts together. If we did, and the question, we weren't sure exactly, Linda, what you were asking, but we calculated these numbers for all city employees, and that's what we understood the question to be. We just separated out public safety. So it's the 366,874 plus the 381,858 if every employee took 1 day of furlough every week, which of course is about a 20% reduction in compensation.
George, does that 381 on the public safety, that would not include, or does it include the overtime needed to cover to meet minimum requirements of staffing and police and fire?
No, it does not cover any overtime cost, and Danielle, you can chime in if I state this incorrectly, but it does not accommodate or consider any potential overtime. Now, Brian and I had discussion today, and I think it's clearly possible in fire that if we did that, that the fire department in their staffing and schedules could work around that so that in fact we still could minimize overtime. But there's the possibility, I think, that we would have to offset some of this savings with overtime costs, either in police and fire or in the general workforce.
So 381 is probably a perfect scenario, but not a realistic. It would be less than that, most likely.
More than likely, it would be less than that. But
Okay.
again, that's assuming we were trying to count, and these numbers may not be exactly right. They'll need some refinement as we go, but it essentially accommodates the savings only from base salaries of all city employees. It has not yet taken into consideration whether or not there's any savings that would be generated for TMRS or other costs, employee costs, but this would be pretty close.
George, I might ask Brian King. Brian, it seems to me that all my years on council, and I've heard from the fire department, is that there's a lot of teamwork involved in getting to know people, and running short can endanger the lives of not only citizens, but of firefighters. Is that the case here when we're talking about furloughing every firefighter one day a week?
Well, that would have been true had we been talking about our earlier staffing that we had before we went to 6-man staffing. That staffing model we had was basically a 5-man staffing with a 5-man minimum. So that meant anytime somebody called off sick or went on vacation, we had to hire over time and a half because we couldn't run with less than 5. Now that we have the 6-man, that is our staffing, but we have a 5-man minimum. So we know we can run with 5. So that means that if we're fully staffed, which we are, that if we furloughed one staff member per shift, we would fall back to that 5. It would not incur overtime costs. So no, it wouldn't. As far as safety goes, no. We know we can run with 5. So that staffing model currently works for us.
Yeah, Brian, that what you just said would be true looking at this by itself. If we were looking at this with any potential for a reduction in force in the fire department because we contract out the ambulance service and EMS, then we would be back to the 5-man staffing, minimum staffing, and that might exacerbate the potential for an overtime problem. Is that correct?
Correct. Now, if that were to take place and we were back to the 5-man staffing model, then yes, you have a potential for overtime costs occurring there if that were the case. If we contracted ambulance out and we had the 5-man staffing, we would. But currently, no.
And Brian, help me again here, because after, I've known David Green, I've known Kelly Turner. It seems to me that having an in-service ambulance is much better than contracting out. The times are better when you have it in-serve here, and that every 30 seconds makes a difference in a lot of cases.
Sure. There's pros and cons to both contracting or running your own EMS. And when you talk to those individuals that you just spoke of, obviously they know. Yes, it is better when we run our own ambulance service. I have an example, but we see you every 3rd day. If we run on you a lot, not through any fault of your own, but just because of medical issues, we see you every 3rd day. We treat you with a certain level of bedside manner. And I'm not saying that the third-party services are, they don't have a good bedside manner. But you could call the ambulance 50 times in a month's period, and you may not see the same two members on a third party service. Whether, unlike us, we're there every third day. So I don't want to look you in the eye on that third day and have delivered horrible service to you. And we train together, and we're tight knit. So we develop that bond, and that we practice, the way we play. So yes, it is better as far as the citizens go for, the level of care.
You're essentially saying, Brian, response times and your familiarity with the patients that you're serving.
Sure. I mean, our response times are good. We're housed right there in the station. I mean, we're not coming from an intersection just because we cleared up at the hospital. We're not having to travel, 15 miles to get to the location, whatever the closest ambulance. I mean, we have that 4 to 5 minute response time there that we try to meet. And so, yes, that would be better. The response time is going to be better with us. It's going to be a little longer with a third party service.
And isn't that your primary number of calls is going to be the ambulance?
Well, that's nationwide in any fire service. I mean, your 80% of your calls are going to be EMS versus fire.
And George, then my question overall is, if you look at these savings and if you were to combine these two, yeah, you'd wipe out your budget deficit of this year. What happens next year?
Well, you mean if we did these furloughs?
Yeah.
Well, this is, again, very high level. These are the number of dollars of savings. There's no accommodation here for the costs of turnover that will likely incur, because some employees who took a 20% pay cut are going to go find another job. So we'll lose some employees if we were to do this, whether it's public safety or civilian employees. So there will be some additional costs that will diminish these savings to some extent. The deficit right now, or the drawdown in the general fund, is $452,000. So looking at this chart, yes, that would overcome that drawdown and balance revenues with expenditures. But again, you're affecting right here on that 8 hours a week, a 20% reduction in compensation just in salaries and hourly rate, and we'll lose some people when that happens.
Would we have to keep this up again next year too, and the following year?
Brian, I've said before, unless we implement some kind of a permanent solution to our fund balance problem and our drawdown problem, the problem is going to be exacerbated every year, and it's going to get worse and worse. And yes, we will have a bigger problem next year than we have this year.
So questions, Linda, I think you had originally brought this idea up. Questions, clarifications?
Well, there was no way that I had in mind 1 day per week for a whole year. So yes, of course you would probably lose some. That wasn't where I was coming from. More what I had in mind was about 3 days or something minimal that you could possibly incorporate around a holiday that the city's not already taking, maybe like Veterans Day or Day. I'm not sure what our holidays are exactly we're taking now, but if you just had that day where you had your employees not coming to work, then it would be less of a hardship, plus it's spread out. But then again, even with that in mind, you're looking at 8 hours per year. That's 7,055 plus 10. What is that? 14,000 something times 3 days, about $43,000. That's still a drop in the bucket from what we're looking at. However, it is a start. When I was looking at the budget some more today, I noticed there were several departments that still have travel expense, and one department, and it had like a seminar or training that's in another state in Illinois. And I'm thinking right now with our situation, travel, especially such as that, needs to be minimized. And there may be other places too that we can look at. Plus we're realizing a small savings, about a 5% of the anticipated health insurance, which is great. There's
Well,
another.
The question,
Go ahead.
Linda, is the training, and this is for George, is this training mandatory training for people to keep their licenses? That's my question.
In another state? I don't know.
It's possible. If it's a national organization, absolutely.
Yep.
That
Okay.
may be the case.
Right, there's probably a mixture. Some travel in the budget is probably certification required, but that would more than likely be something that could be accommodated in-state somewhere. Some of the travel is and training is just keeping up with professional qualifications, and it's pretty standard. I know a year or so ago, we cut a lot of travel out of the budget. Some departments do still have some in there, but it's not real large dollars when we're talking about the kind of drawdown we're talking about. And I understand that's not to say every penny doesn't count, and we could go in and find $1,000 here or $500 there. But and we've done that in the past, but we'd have to analyze every department and see exactly what it's for.
And Linda brought up another good point. The savings on the insurance, how much is that going to be?
Well, it's not going to be a lot. Danielle chime in, but I think what we had in there at 6% was around $20,000. So again, if we are successful and have a reduction in the rate, that'll all be a savings. That $20,000 will essentially be saved, and we'll be able to pull it out.
Keep going, Linda. I just had to have some clarifications.
I don't know. I mean, the only other suggestion is, actually there's two more. One is like our part-time positions. Maybe we could reevaluate those, and I can see that probably some are needed, but especially now with the close of City Hall to the public, how necessary are these part-time positions? I'm sure questions you've probably already kind of thought about. And then there's a big alternative that probably nobody wants to hear, but the EDC. We have to stop and look. What has EDC done for our city to benefit it? And I know there are some things probably, but lately it's been very minimal. It might benefit our city in the long run to eliminate the EDC and put that sales tax to the general fund. That would require an election, but I would much rather see us look at an election to reallocate that money to better use possibly than to have a petition and have an election that way due to possible loss of property tax that we might have been kind of anticipating to count on. Just some things to think about.
Well, for me, when I look at the EDC, there had been no economic development up at the front of the city without the EDC. In fact, most of the economic development that's been driven in the city has been by the EDC. And of course, you're right. It would take an election, and that would be, how much would that be, George, a half-cent sale tax?
I believe it's a half-cent, yes.
Yeah, but can you, here's my question, George. I don't think you can take the half-cent and put it into the general fund. I think you get 1 cent for the general fund, but then you can have another cent, but that has to be divided up for other things. You could create a crime control district if you wanted to do that, and that would pay for your some part of your police department, or a street fund if you wanted.
Or street maintenance. Yeah.
Well, of course, if there's any part of the, and Lakita would need to chime in here, but if there's any part of the half-cent for the EDC that's currently going to pay debt, that can't just be reallocated.
Right.
And in fact, it would probably keep you from closing out the EDC and eliminating the EDC as long as there's outstanding debt.
can we find out how much debt they have and for how long?
I can't, I'm sorry, Mayor, I can't answer that. Lakita might.
I said, can we find out and get that
Oh,
information?
absolutely, yes.
Anything else, Linda? As he does some
No,
more.
thank you.
All right, Chad, questions?
Did it come off mute? There we go.
Yep, there you go.
Well, I've met with Sonny Gary and Mark Kessler with AMR. Sonny is the Vice President of Operations for Texas and Oklahoma. I think it would be at least prudent to hear what they have to say as far as fire services and emergency medical response services are concerned, because they do handle all of Arlington already. They're a rather large company. They're quite efficient, and they have some incredible things that they do company-wide that even as a short-term solution for us, as we kind of start looking to the future of going, hey, right now we're hurting, but in 5 years, this could be a very different story. So maybe we consider working out a compromise with them or some kind of an agreement with them to help us get on track, to help us save some money as we transition back to being full-fledged on our own as our tax situation improves. And I talked with them at length with how they've done this with other cities where things kind of exploded on them like this and they weren't able to do anything about it, and they've come in and helped them basically do these types of things and then keep the system running smoothly, and then start bringing in city staff to replace their own staff as the transition occurs over time. So it builds back up to being city run over time. So I think it's prudent, because for me, with this kind of deficit and this kind of requests, I think every option needs to be heard, whether we say yes or no to it. I think it's prudent to at least hear it. So that's kind of where I'm standing on those situations right now. This is not a fun position to be in, because it's a lean budget. I'm going to give props to everybody. This is a lean budget, and anybody that wants to go digging through this, please do. It's lean. For a city our size to be running on such a small budget, it is impressive. And I applaud every one of you for the hard work you do, because it truly is impressive. You guys get a lot done with every dollar we use. So, but that's just that's where I'm at right now. Is we got to hear all the options so that we can figure out, what path to truly take, and where some compromise can be made, and where some outside the box thinking can be done. Because I think that's what probably is going to have to happen here, is we're going to have to see some outside the box thinking, especially if we don't want to lose services or, go down that road. So,
Mayor, if I could just make a brief comment, I think clearly the discussion that I've had with the fire department in the last week, and particularly today, there are some dollars that could be saved and some efficiencies with contracting out the EMS service. I think we need to be careful with that we draft some kind of an RFP, or that we look at, I know we've had a number of discussions with a different vendor, Chad, than the one you talked to, but it's in the area as well. So I think we need to, if we're going to look at that, we need to keep our options open to look at different vendors and see where we can get the best bang for our buck and the best service. So.
Yeah.
Sandra. Sandra muted. I know Sandra has something to say.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm just asking, have Lakita ever operated a fund with a 6.3% balance before? And if so, what was the outcome of it? If we actually got down to the 6.3%, what would happen?
Sorry. No, Sandra, I have not. I have not ever been at a city that operated on such a low fund balance.
Okay. Have you ever known any cities that have operated at that low fund balance?
No, I don't. I can tell you that one year we were faced with a huge tax rate increase from our prior city. You know, I've seen, one year where there was an election where a lot of the city had an election, and the citizens voted on some pretty large bond packages. And as a result of that, there was a tax rate increase that was pretty significant one year, but we were not running on a low percentage in the fund balance.
But going up to the 80%, that is also to cover the fund balance, to keep it up between the 18 and 25%, correct?
Well, it's an effort to start. So if we do the 77 cents, we'll only be at 6%. If we do the 80 cent, we'll be running at 9%, which is still unacceptable. But what the 80 cent does is it gives us a new starting place, so that each year we're not faced with such huge decisions, anymore, hopefully. But yeah, that's the difference between the 77 cent and the 80 cent.
I got a call today right before I came on to this meeting, and it was saying that the citizen told me that they had spoke with the lady from S&P because he was wanting to know why our rating was in jeopardy, and that the lady told him that they didn't contact us. The city contacted them. So it just bothers me that we constantly try to get the citizen to trust us. And if it's true that, that would happen, it just makes no sense, because my thing is, what else have we been doing to hurt the city financially? George, did you hear anything about that? That Brady contacted S&P and made a comment about our fund balances could be in trouble before he left? Did you know anything about that?
George, you need to unmute.
Sandra, we've had debt issues and COs and tax notes that we've had the bond rating agencies have looked at, and they look at us regularly, whether we're asking for a rating or not. Now, obviously, when they looked at us last year and told us that they were going to put us on the negative watch, I don't think, Lakita, we were going out for a rating at that point. They simply were doing a standard review of the city. And I'm not sure I know what prompted that review. But
it wasn't with Lakita, it was when Brady was here.
Well, the last review that put us on a negative watch, that was last year when Lakita was here, and long after Brady had left, I think. Isn't that correct, Lakita?
Yeah, as far as I know, this last review that they did, they approached the city,
Okay.
But what we've done beforehand, I'm not sure. But yeah, this time, certainly, my office didn't contact them at all. And
If I
I don't
remember,
believe anyone, even our bond counsel, I don't believe. But yeah, they definitely, the young lady who did the review definitely contacted myself and George.
That review was in October of 19. So that's not been that long ago. It's been less than a year since that review was done.
Lakita, you have been great at finding money in the budget. So I'm going to assume that you have went through that with a fine-tooth comb. So whatever in that budget is the right numbers, correct?
Yes, and thank you. Yes, we just basically, we're bringing forth, with the tax rate, if that was something that the council wanted to consider changing, we wanted to make sure that we laid out several options, for you to be able to review and, kind of sort through.
Okay. No further questions from me.
I just want to clarify. I think maybe the last time that we did it is that when Brady was here, is that we were looking at a bond package. Didn't we look at a bond package and we voted? I think we eventually voted it down, didn't we? It was going to go to 4 million, then we went down to 2 million. George?
Right. I mean, I think it may have been when we got up to the point of actually approving the bids and the proposals, and the council decided not to do the sale. But I don't remember the amount. It seems like it was probably more than $4 million. I just don't remember, Mayor.
And for my clarification, Lakita, because I don't know this, do the bond agencies check on cities randomly?
Yes.
Yes, that's my understanding. I mean, they give us a rating, and they have clients who rely on their evaluation of our credit worthiness.
Yeah, and a lot of times what they do before they ever even contact any official at the city is they'll reach out to our bond counsel. So actually, when we got word that S&P was looking at us, we actually got the first word, not even directly from S&P. We got that from Samco, our bond counsel.
So they don't tell us, they go right to our bond counsel and then we find out?
They can. And that's what happened with this one that happened in October of 2019.
I think, Mayor, that's a common courtesy in the industry, that they would let our bond counsel, as our representative, know that they were going to do a review of our credit worthiness for whatever reason.
Learn something new every day. Anything else, Senator? Is that it? You good? All right. I know there's one more council member on. I forgot. What's his name? Chris.
I would also like to maybe echo what Chad said, that Lakita, I dove in pretty good over the last few days, and I don't see a lot of room, shall we say. I think that it looks like you guys have worked very hard to get the budget down and control the expenses. And, you know, I know that we've talked about, $5,000 here, $8,000 there. That's a long way from the $400,000 that we need, even at the 77-cent rate. So I know that we may have to look at doing some things that are unpopular or that are drastic. You know, Sandra mentioned the fund balance being so low, and one natural disaster could put our city in serious jeopardy. I mean, we've had a tornado pass through here before, and, you know, the things like that cost the city money, whether it's in overtime, whether it's in losses that are not covered by things that we have. And I'm very concerned about the fund balance getting that low, just like Sandra brought up, that, well, what happens? Do people operate with a general fund balance that low? And, you know, I know Linda said, well, maybe we should talk about something unpopular. And, you know, I'm probably going to say the same thing, that I've looked at the budget and I've tried to find some minor things that might help us, but they all just seem to be Band-Aids to me, that maybe they save us a few dollars this year, but then next year we're in the same boat. So I would like to at least throw out there for the discussion that I think we need to consider whether we can keep the library open at this point in our city. I don't want to lose our police and fire department, and I don't want to lose our city staff, and I don't want to lose our administrative staff, but I think we need to do something drastic in order to try to help get this balance going in the right direction. And I realize that's a serious loss in services, but to me, we're talking about the future of Kennedale remaining a solvent city, and it's going to take more than a $30,000 fix to make that happen. So I would at least like for us to discuss that as an option and see what other folks think about it. And Amanda, I'm sorry, it's not personal. It's a very tough thing for me to even say. But I think it's something that we need to consider it as a way to make a serious impact on our budget.
I would like to say something about the library. As someone who works in education, we cannot afford, our kids cannot afford to have a city without a library. You just can't. You're already behind because of COVID and not being able to attend school in person. If you then turn around and take that library away from them, that's going to just put them further and further behind. And so, you know, I know a lot of people say, well, it's just the library. Sometimes that's all a kid has. They can't afford to go and buy books. You know, everything they get from the library. So to say that we're going to take that away from them at this time, I just don't think that's a good idea to close that library.
Well, Sandra,
Unless we just want a bunch of dumb kids running around for the next 20 years, then, you know, but our kids deserve a chance just like any other kid. And they deserve to have a library. A lot of them don't even have stores. They have to spend money driving here and driving there to get to the stores. No way they should have to drive all over the county to find a book.
I understand, Sandra, but do you want us to not have policemen? Do you want us to not have anybody fixing the potholes? Because we're in serious trouble.
Chris, we've had money and the potholes still didn't get fixed. I mean,
$50,000 isn't going to fix it this year.
Well, I'm just saying, but we've had money before and the potholes still didn't get fixed. So, you know, let's go back to the EDC. Is it any way to go from 0.5% with them to 1/4% with them and without an election to change that?
I think you still have to have the election. I still think you'd have a debt issue right there probably too.
And
Chris,
you know, I do not want to close down the fire or the police. I support them just like I support the library, but it's all important.
I agree with you. It is.
But Chris, if we stay at the 73 cents, that's a $746,000 drop. So you get rid of the library, you're still at a $500,000 drop.
Sure.
So that would mean what? Senior center?
Maybe.
Mayor, if I could, just a comment, one of the things that's come up in our staff discussions, and we've talked about, Amanda and I talked about it at some length, is, and Leslie, there's a potential that we would like you to at least think about and consider shifting the management and the operation of the senior center over to the library, utilize library staff in that regard, simply because right now with COVID and with the senior center closed down and not seeing that change in the immediate foreseeable future, we could save some money with our contract with 660 or better and still maintain some programming with the senior center, either at the library or in the building where they are now, at least maintain the facilities. And apparently the city has managed that senior program themselves in the past. Right now, frankly, there's little value in our contract with our contractor because they can't operate and do the programs. And I'm not sure that I know yet, I got word yesterday that there may be some changes in their programming with regard to meals, but I don't know the details of that yet. But I do think it's something that we could probably manage with our existing library staff and save that $25,000 or $30,000. And that's probably a bigger chunk of savings than we might have in some of the other things we've been talking about, other than personnel costs. So again, I don't think it would diminish our services to the seniors, and it might in fact shore it up. So just something to think about again, that we're kicking around, and I just didn't have enough detail to put it in my memo to you today.
But when we talk about maybe closing, just throwing it out there like Chris did, closing a library, that would be permanent.
Well, I think that you have to understand, and we tried to put some of the information, I didn't really get it all in there because it was getting pretty long, but once we diminish our services at the library below a certain level, and if we only opened 2 days or maybe even 3 days a week, we would lose our state accreditation. And that means we lose access to $9 million worth of inventory and books and materials with Mansfield and with Arlington that our citizens can go to today without having to go buy a library card in those cities for considerably more than our per capita cost is costing us to keep the library open. So you don't just shut the door and not lose some significant service. And Chris, I understand where you're coming from and the priorities with police and fire. I just think we need to understand that the library, by having that consortium with Mansfield and Arlington and the ability to get grants as we've gotten over the years, that's money coming in to our benefit, our citizens, that while we may reduce our payroll by closing it down and losing 3 full-time employees and going to 5 or 6 part-time, there is also a cost in service that is going to be provided to the citizens.
Sure.
And in our case, because we're the smaller of all those cities in that consortium, it's a significant loss of service.
I
Not to
agree.
say we can't do it. I'm just saying that there's more to it than just the payroll savings and shutting the door. And I know you know that.
There's also a cost for doing nothing.
True.
And that's where we are now, is we're paying the price for doing little or nothing. And as Chad already said, we're having to make the hard decisions now that history has brought us to.
Okay,
Regardless of how we got here, we have to start making the decisions, and that's what we're here to do.
Sandra?
okay, I know they said do not touch the water fund, but what if we touch the water fund? Because we're sitting up at what, 44.3% of projected operating costs? What amount could we possibly take from that water fund to help us?
We
Because
can't,
something's got to give. So
well, because of the nature of the fund, it's a completely different, the water fund is an enterprise fund. And so, as it stands now, the water fund it's already supporting the general fund, to some extent, for administrative costs and things that are associated with running the water. So we have that built in already.
okay.
But other than that, I don't think there's much more we can stretch, because I don't remember the exact number, but I believe something to the tune of 200,000 to 300,000. We're already supplementing the general fund through water.
And Sandra, if you remember, just a couple of years ago, the council was very concerned because of the amount of money that was being charged to the water fund by the general fund, and the council overwhelmingly voted to cut that amount of money. And because it was higher than most cities too, by the way, that was I think that was a good point that they had made. And we had cut that. George, do you remember what the percentage was on that?
No, it seems like we went from 9 to 7 or something like that, and then back up at one point and then from 7 to 5 and then back to 7. It just, the problem, as you're pointing out, Mayor, is if you let that transfer and justify it by pilot payments in lieu of taxes or franchise fees, once they get to a certain level, then clearly and appropriately, the public begins to question whether or not it's really associated with cost to that fund. Is it a real legitimate cost, or are you just figuring out a way to siphon money off of water rates to put them in the general fund? And I don't think we want to get back there. Now, that doesn't mean we can't look at what our actual administrative costs are, what our franchise fee to water and sewer ought to be for use of rights of way and so forth. And if we've lowered it too much or we're off base, some of that's subjective in your judgment, and we can look at that. But I don't think it's a cure-all for this kind of a problem to just transfer more money out of water and sewer.
But I think you're hearing, George, you're hearing things like the ambulance, the water fund, looking at those transfer numbers, also looking at EDC, these are things that maybe we can put together and find something in there.
Well, again, that's some of what I sent you today. And Brian, we've clearly gone through a lot of discussion over those same things in the last 2 years and tried to do some of them, but there are limitations, both practical and legal limitations on some of what you can do and why those funds are separate.
And another thing about that, and just looking at the number itself, it looks like the administrative charge to the general fund looks like it's at about 7%. And so it looks like it's at about 7% of whatever water revenue is projected to be for that year. We're already transferring that to the general fund. Next year's, the amount is approximately $355,000 that we're sending over to the general fund. Another reason that you wouldn't want to do much of anything else with the water fund is because even though it looks like, you know, we're projecting the 44% fund balance, there are a lot of outstanding costs that are going to be still associated with transferring everything over to City of Arlington that's still in the air, and we can't tie exact numbers to just yet. Not only capital, but, you know, other things related to the billing transfer. So, you know, it looks like 44%, but we don't want to get too excited about that, you know, because some of that, you know, we just cannot anticipate what the actual cost is going to be.
Lakita, I've had people ask me, why not just do a 10% cut across the board of every agency, every program? Why is that not possible?
A 10% decrease in every city program.
Yeah.
In operating.
Yeah. Well, what's the? I know that sounds like, to me, it sounds like it's a pretty simple solution, but simple solutions tend to be wrong a lot of times. So explain to me why that would be a bad idea, or why that would be a good idea.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say whether it would be a good or bad idea. You know, with this, I think, you know, as Chris mentioned, that, you know, we're in a situation now that we kind of need to explore everything at this point. But if you look at our budget, most of our budget is not even in operating. I mean, it's personnel. Most of our budget is not in programs. And so if you cut 10% of programs at a city our size, you know, the citizenry will see an impact on that.
Well, it's not just a city our size, but it's a city our size that has gone through years of eliminating those personnel costs. Back in 2015 and before I was here, there was a significant budget reduction and personnel reductions in force. There's no, I've said this before too, there's no bench strength here. If you eliminate 10% in code enforcement, you have no code enforcement because there's only one employee there. And 75% of our budget is personnel costs. So you eliminate even 10%, you had to go to the personnel to get that. And just to try to go through and determine, and 10%, Mayor, in non-departmental, which is where all of our insurance payments are made. We can't just whack off 10% of that and provide things we're required to provide by law. So,
and the two biggest budget items are police, fire. If you're talking about 10% there, are you talking about laying off employees at that point in police and fire?
Absolutely, and without a doubt. There is very little in the police and fire budgets that's not personnel related. And as I went through each department and tried to just in my own mind, go to those pages in your budget book behind the detail and look at what explains each line item and try to determine what's discretionary spending and what's non-discretionary spending. What do we have a choice about? We have a choice about nearly every employee on the payroll, but we don't have a choice about contracts or insurance or electricity and those kinds of things. So it's hard to say, just take a percentage in every department because all of the departments are personnel heavy. No, I don't mean by too many employees. That's where the money is in personnel. And
Yeah,
I mean,
in your budget book,
in my exercise of doing that with each department, I've identified, just to try to balance that budget of $450,000, it would take almost 11 employees to do that. So if we're not talking about the real alternative, which is where cities get their revenue, and that's in sales tax and ad valorem tax primarily. And if we just take ad valorem tax increases off the table, and then we set aside any costs in police and fire, because we don't want to diminish those, it leaves a very small percentage of our budget that is discretionary to go after that kind of money. It's just, and then, Chris, you are talking about shutting down the library, shutting down the senior center, dramatically cutting back what we do on the few employees we've got to do right-of-way mowing and park mowing and maintenance of buildings and facilities, because those people won't be here. And I'm carrying a message here and being the bad guy, but I'm trying to say to you, just cutting the budget is not possible without cutting the few people we have left to provide the service. And we can do it if that's the decision of council, but it's a very tough decision to make.
Any other questions right now?
no, I was just going to add to that. In your budget books on page 10, it generally just it sections out the expenditures for the general fund by category: personnel, operating, and non-departmental. And out of the 7.7 million in expenditures, 5.2 million is personnel. So you have 589,000 in non-departmental, and the rest of it is operating, which is not a lot. And so, just to go along with what George was saying, there's just not a lot of programming to cut. And when you do, you'll have to correspond and possibly cut personnel too.
Any other questions right now? Because we'll have another meeting, but it's more food for thought.
What's the lifespan we have left on our ambulance? Because I know it's not in good shape. So,
Well, I think the chief had identified that we need, it's on the capital, and it's on our capital list of things to replace
Well,
this
don't
year
forget,
and
Brian?
to buy one new one, but
Brian, what's that?
Well, it's our apparatus are an issue. In past, we haven't adhered to the vehicle replacement policy just because of funding and whatnot. And they are due to be replaced. And if you go back and you look at the trends in our budget, you're going to see that vehicle maintenance has went up in certain years, because we have went over that life span of those apparatus, and we're there now. And I would be lying to you if I said that we're going to make it through another 5 years and not have any major issues, because we already have. And of course, the replacement costs a lot of money.
what about, like, we have projects now where we're getting into 3-story apartment complexes. Are we in a situation where we need an apparatus that can handle that, or do what we have currently can handle that?
Well, I got into this with in the last meeting that I attended. So we used to have a Quint. We used to have a ladder truck. And now, when you're talking about 3 stories, obviously you're talking about a high rise. So most people think high rises are, look downtown Fort Worth and you see the big skyscrapers. Well, for us, it's, a skyscraper in downtown Fort Worth is obviously a high rise for them. But for us, a high rise would be something that is out of our reach for us. And so 3 stories, 4 stories, we just don't have enough of it. And so how we combat that is we use our mutual aid. And so just like if we had a Station 2, we use Mansfield's Flint 4. And so Station 4 is right down the road, 287. You're talking about, we've got a 4 to 5 response time. They're in our first alarm assignment. If we have a working fire, they respond same time we do. They go out the door the same time we do. So you're looking at maybe two extra minutes, 2.5.
Okay.
So we're good there. Now I would say if we started building, 3 stories, if that was the standard, and it was 3 stories, from here on out, then yeah, we'd want to look at probably upgrading our apparatus. But right now we're okay.
As I say, because the last couple of things that we've seen have all been 3 stories. So I don't think it's too far out of our future.
No, we train for that. I mean, our upcoming training is a high-rise training at live fire at TCC. So we train for that. We have high-rise packs and things on our engines now. So we have ways to combat that. So
good. That's what I wanted to hear.
Mayor, I know that ambulance has been at least the last 3 budgets. Can you recall, has it been requested for more than the last 3?
Well, I have to ask Brian if he remembers when we got the last ambulance. Was that 6 years ago?
2011.
9 years ago. And so what's our reserve? How old is our reserve ambulance?
That is I believe it's an 06. 06 or 07. That one needs some work, but it's came through for us, but it's in bad shape. We need to replace it. Now keep in mind that first out medic, the ambulance, has a new engine. We had to put a new engine in. But then again, I mean, keep in mind that when you do that, they're never the same. I mean, if you've ever had the experience with that on a personal vehicle, I mean, if you look at an ambulance, it's no different than a truck, the chassis. I mean, you have the box on the back, but it's basically a Ford chassis, a Ford pickup truck. And so when you replace the engine in that, they're never really the same. But you're looking at $300,000 bill.
Brian, aren't we due to replace a fire apparatus in the next 1 or 2 years?
Yeah.
We are. That time limit has come up as well. You look at 10 years on those versus the ambulance, where it's 5 and 5. These are 10. So you have we bought the first out engine that we're in now at the same time we bought that medic. And so
if we replace that with a comparable apparatus, not with a Quint, we're talking
correct.
700,000 to 800,000.
You're looking at close to $1 million for a Quint, and I believe we paid a little over $500,000 for that engine now, but because of inflation or whatnot, that same apparatus, which we wouldn't have to get one that big. You're looking at around $700,000 for a new engine.
So realistically, if we don't purchase the ambulance this year, next year we need roughly $1 million worth of equipment for the fire department.
If we adhere to the vehicle replacement policy, yes.
But could you, George, tax note that out, because you have money in INS? Could you tax note that money out over a period of 10 years, the life of the vehicle, and still be able to fund it, still having your general fund problems, but this would come out of INS? Could you do that?
Well, yes, the answer is yes, you could fund it that way, but it would go against the room you have on issuance of debt. I mean, we're talking about the $14 million worth of debt that we have. Anything we buy in the way of capital that's not water and sewer, then it would be applied toward that, or could require eventually a rate increase for debt service. But the answer is yes, we could take tax notes or some other form of debt and amortize a vehicle like that over that period of time.
It would mean pushing off certain street projects though, right? Or water projects or whatever. Street projects.
Or something else, yeah.
But if our fund balance,
or raising the tax rate to pay for it.
but if our fund balance is at 5 or 6%, what kind of a rate are we going to get on that? Not good, Lakita? I'm assuming not positive.
Yes, I mean, that's the main thing about running the fund balance down is it's going to affect, your viability and your ability to go in and even get debt. But you certainly wouldn't get the best interest rates on them, on whatever debt you had.
So Lakita, are you saying that if we keep running the fund balance that we do, that's below that even if we cut, we may end up losing some of that money when we go out and bond out for a fire truck or whatever, because we're gonna have to pay more in interest. And so that's gonna be eaten up as well.
That could happen, but the best thing we can do right now is we need to look for the best positive outcome right now. And so, the best thing that we can do is look at the options that, we have in front of us. If there's a way that the council would consider the 80-cent tax rate, that's something that will have a positive bearing moving forward. Because if we can implement that in addition to some more savings, of course, whatever we implement, we're going to do the best that we can to scrounge and save like we've always done. But if we set that new benchmark and then, moving forward, we may be able to create even a better outcome than the 9%. Okay, if we're able to do that, by the time S&P comes back, if they see that we budgeted, and put that tax rate up some, and we budgeted and still create additional savings, they may not downgrade us, or that it may only be for a shorter period of time.
I guess, Chris, there is a way to get that fire truck and the ambulance without having to impacting our general fund balance.
Yeah, I think as, like George stated, the 14 million in COs that we're talking about getting, we sent out a capital projects list to council for certain projects that we were talking about doing, street and drainage and things like that. If we had to take $1 million of that, and dedicate to an apparatus, that may be something that we may have to do, because, of course, there's no way to fund it any other way. I mean, it would have to be via some type of debt instrument.
Yeah, Mayor, I just want everyone to know, citizens, council members, to know that when we get through this budget cycle, we still have some more tough decisions to make next year, because we still have a lot of things that are extremely important, such as replacing a 9-year-old ambulance. And I don't want everybody to think, well, if we make a bunch of cuts or we make some little nicks and we get through here, we're good to go next year. We still have some tough decisions to make for the next 2 or 3 budget cycles, and maybe the next 2 or 3 elections if we put out something for bond elections down the road.
Well, the idea is that, it's up to the council to prioritize where they want to spend that debt. And you can look at that list that Lakita gave us, and you can also think about apparatus for the fire department. Linda, did you raise your hand, or are you showing the peace sign?
Well, I do want to have a comment whenever Chris is done.
Go ahead.
Okay. Obviously, we can probably all agree that we definitely need to do something more than our current 73 cents that we have. Tough decisions, as we all been echoing. I'm kind of curious, though, what council's leaning towards so that staff can better give us more information as far as, are you leaning to the 80 cents? Or are you leaning more to what the proposed budget is for 77 cents? Or what about the no new revenue at about 75 cents? And George, I did like the idea that staff's been talking about with the senior center combining with the library. That could be a good solution there. And I guess, Mayor, I could start it off. I'm leaning towards the no new revenue. And I know that's even stricter, but that's when we're here. That's when we're talking. is to see what council's desire is so that staff can work diligently more so than they have to try to attain that.
Well, and I would
That's
just
all.
say, if council members don't feel like commenting just yet because you need more information, you don't have to commit yourself right now, but feel free to chime in if you'd like. Because obviously we got several proposals that you guys have thrown out there up on the board that we need to look at.
I mean, if we're going to consider no new revenues, then you better have some ideas on where the hurt's going to come in cuts, because otherwise, with that drop, it's going to be even worse than we see it on paper now. So either we have to get serious and go, this is going to suck, and it's going to suck for a while, or that's just not a reality. So there's no other way to put that.
Yeah, I guess one of my questions is, Lakia, is that it was amazing that we only had a 2.7% increase in ad valorem.
Mhm.
Did we get any feedback from the appraisal district on why that could be? And I understand from what I'm reading that that's going to be a low number again next year. Is that COVID related or what?
I don't think it's COVID related. I don't think we've really seen the entire impact from COVID at this time. But I can tell you, and they didn't, provide any specifics, it's market, but yeah, the 2.7%, I knew at some point it was going to happen. You're rarely going to have a situation where you're going to keep getting 6 to 7% year over year over year. And that's what a lot of cities have been enjoying, over the past 7 or 8 years, so I wasn't expecting it to be quite this low, 2.7%, but we knew at some point it was going to fall off some because it's just the nature of the market.
Well, I'm doing my part. My property valuation went up 31%. So
Okay.
last year was 61. My house is now worth $130,000 more than what I paid for it 3 years ago. So
Wow.
I don't know if that's good or insane. So
Please don't appeal it.
Well, I'd like to continue this discussion, but I think we'll have to do another one. I need to get to executive session to talk about our judge position. So be thinking about it. You've got new information. George, find out the additional information that was asked about EDC, out third ambulance. I forgot the other ones, but you've got them.
Right.
And then we'll try to schedule another meeting as soon as we can to have further discussions. In the meantime, be thinking, like Linda was saying, what are your options? What are you leaning to? And be ready to answer some of those questions soon to give some direction to the staff.
All right, we will do it.
All right, let's move into executive session. Leslie.
Okay, I'm gonna have to individually put people into the waiting room, so just.
Well, and I've got to announce it before you do that, I believe.
That is true. I apologize.
Yeah, so I've got to pull up my agenda here. That may take me a second. I'll just ask Drew. Drew, what's the numbers I need to use?
No, and he's in.
Did we lose Drew?
No,
Right.
there we go.
551-071, 551-074, 551-072.
All right, we're going to move into executive session of 551-071, 551-072, and 551-074, you said?
Yes.
Yes, we're moving into executive session under those guidelines.
Okay, just give me a minute.
I will be right back.
Same.
That's vodka, Linda. I want some of it, even though I don't drink, but I may start.
Let's see, who do we have? Danielle, would you like to stay? Or
She looks like she's commanding a starship, actually.
I'm okay not staying unless you need me.
Well, the only issue we have is personnel related. It's with the judges, so you might want to
I'll stay.
sit in.
All right, do I have everyone?
No, Chris is gone.
Okay.
Do we need to be recording this portion, Drew?
No, I will stop it.
Will do.
Everybody.
There we go. Chad. All right, I would like to call the regular meeting to order. And Leslie, would you please take roll?
Yes. Josh Altum, Chris Pugh,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandra Lee,
Here.
and Linda Rhodes,
Here.
and Chad Wandell.
Here.
And you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Do we have any visitors or citizens for the forum to speak?
Leslie, you're muted.
Apologies. I don't see any raised hands or anyone requesting to speak.
Excellent. Okay, we'll go to the report and announcement from the city council. Chris, you have any announcements?
No, ma'am, I don't this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Chad?
Just same old, trucking out there, working at our food banks and stuff like that. So if you guys are trying to figure out a way to help our community and you're tight on money but long on time, we could definitely use your time over at the Fort Worth Community Food Bank because they allow us a lot of groceries to take back for our senior citizen centers. So, I mean, it's substantial. And for those of you that have some money, consider shopping there. They bring in truckloads of goods that are donated constantly. Like Walmart literally gives them a truck full of stuff, and you can go there and it's like Storage Wars. So if you're into that, you can just walk around and basically like, that's mine. And not only did the product was free for them, but they get the proceeds from that, which go and help us as well. So so go help. It's 4 hours, pick a day. I know Sarah goes out there on Mondays, I think, and then I have another 2 groups that go out on Wednesday and Thursday. They're not even open Friday, so you only got 4 days to choose from. It's from 8 to noon, and they feed you lunch. So and it really helps our community by volunteering.
Thank you, Ed. Linda?
Yes, I just want to say thank you, Leslie, for putting back the YAC application, you know, the possibility for people to sign up. And we did have 3 new ones, 3 new applicants. So that's good. We have 3 more youth that's going to be involved. Thank you.
All right, and I don't have any updates, so let's go to the mayor, and we will be recognizing the top readers for the summer reading program. And Amanda, would you like to announce those winners?
Yes, thank you very much. So we had several categories of top readers this year. In the preschool category, we had Aurelia Ortiz. She read 1,250 minutes. And Carolyn Taylor read 1,000 minutes. In our elementary age group, we had Alexis Donnelly, who read 4,500 minutes, and Jennifer Chirov, who read 2,750 minutes. In our teen age group, Abby Lopez read 8,000 minutes. She read the most of anyone in the entire summer. And Anna Schunkweiler read 2,750 minutes. We had 2 adults this year who were our top readers. We had Paula Mercado. She read 5,888 minutes. And Irma Frias read 5,103 minutes for a grand total of 84,290 minutes from our 101 summer reading participants this year.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome.
George, do you have any updates for us?
No, ma'am, I do not.
All right. Finance reports. We can look through them on our own. If you have any questions, you can either email or call. And so next, let's go to the consent agenda. Do we need anything pulled?
Mayor Pro Tem Lee, the approval of the minutes for July 21st, there was a correction to one of the motions that added the dollar amount to the KISD interlocal agreement that we have. It's when a motion is made, that would need to be noted.
Okay, Linda, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the correction to the July 21st council meeting to include the dollar amount for the KISD agreement, interlocal agreement.
You have any seconds?
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Passes unanimously. Excellent. Now we have items for individual consideration. Do we have any one with a consideration for this ordinance 698?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll make a motion that we postpone ordinance 698 until the next monthly scheduled council meeting.
Have it. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. For all, if you approve, raise your hand. All right, passed unanimously. Thank y'all. So now we need to close out the regular meeting and open up our public hearing. First case we have is PZ 2003. We're going to conduct a public hearing and consider ordinance regarding a request by William Franks for rezoning from C1 to R3.
Mayor Melissa Daly will present this case.
Wrong one, Melissa.
I hope.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I think everything froze.
Yeah.
Okay. So this case is at Harrison and North Little School Road. This is currently zoned C1. The applicant, Mr. Franks, the owner of the property, would like to rezone it to R3. This is adjacent to a neighborhood that's already zoned R3. Here's the location. I think these maps should be in your packet as well. The uses in the area are quite mixed. It's, as I said, adjacent to a single family neighborhood, and there are also single family neighborhoods in the area. Here's an aerial of the area. We have a church across the street, some small neighborhood retail that is adjacent to that, and kind of catty corner from this lot. And then, of course, just to the south at North Little School Road and Kennedale Sublet is a new development with the senior housing going in with the office on the corner. So there's kind of a mix of uses, but this lot is adjacent to single family homes in that single family neighborhood. This is a vacant piece of property. This is a picture that was taken actually, a Google picture actually, before a house was already built. So it looks larger than it is. There's actually a house on this site that has just been completed. So it's really just the corner. So the house could actually face either Harrison or Little School Road, depending on how they situated the house. But I would guess that the house will probably face the same direction as the other homes on Harrison. I think this area was zoned C1 through a city-initiated rezoning some years ago with the idea that these properties along North Little School Road could be commercial in use. And I think that's true to some extent, except that this particular lot is really not very large. It's only about a half acre, which makes it very difficult, if not impossible, really, to meet C1 requirements for parking and setbacks and so on to any kind of commercial building there. This is the future land use plan, and it is designated to be a neighborhood village. This is the Oaks Court development here on the corner of that. I think we do have the opportunity to, sorry, I'm having difficulty. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, my internet's cutting in and out. I think we do have an opportunity for a neighborhood village, particularly on this corner. In fact, you're going to see one here soon, another application for neighborhood village zoning on this corner. And potentially some neighborhood village a little bit to the north. However, as I said, I think this small half-acre lot does make sense potentially to be single family and would be challenging for that single lot to become a C1 and meet the requirements for C1. So staff does recommend approval of the zoning. The Planning and Zoning Commission did approve this unanimously as well.
All right. Thank you very
And the
much.
applicant is here.
Would the applicant like to say anything?
Well, only that when I bought that property down there, it was C3. I'm sorry, R3. And then through the years, some way, without any signs being posted of any way, shape, or form, all of a sudden when my tax deal come up one year, this thing had that C1 overlay on it, which has prevented me from selling those lots. All these years, I've owned them, I don't know, 35, 40 years. And the only way I'll ever sell them, I've had several people, I mean a busload, look at it for what it was zoned for, the Z3, and almost 100% of those people said that by the time that they met the city requirements, the zoning requirements for setbacks and parking lots and what have you, that they didn't see a big use for a building there that they could really use. And so I knew then the only way I ever sell it is if it's back to the residential zoning. And I've had a lot of questions about it on buying it for residential, but never could do that. And I just I was going to use it for my income, retirement income, and I can't use it for nothing where it's sitting now. Besides pay tax, $3,000 worth of taxes on it every year. And I'd really appreciate it if y'all could understand my plea.
Yes, sir. Well, we appreciate you coming and speaking to us tonight. Thank you very much, Mr. Franks.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I would like to close out this public hearing and go back into regular session. And do we have a motion to approve the rezoning from C1 to R3?
Anybody that's here that wants to speak on this one, or did we do that all in the front?
Well, Mr. Franks spoke.
I'm just making sure there's not somebody in.
I'm not aware of anyone else that's wishing to speak.
Then on that note, then I make a motion that we approve, and I just scroll past it. Case PZ 20-03.
I second it. All in favor, raise your hand. It passes unanimously. Okay. Let's close out of regular session and go back into public hearing for case PZ 2026.
Hey, was mine turned down or?
No, Mr. Franks, yours was approved.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I really appreciate y'all's time.
You have a great day, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Somebody text me if this goes away. My internet is having real problems. So we wanted to bring to you the potential of a new zoning category for townhomes. This really came up as we've had developments that come forward that have had an interest in townhomes. And currently, in most cases, it falls under multifamily, although Urban Village and Old Town also allow for townhomes. But if you're just doing townhomes, it's typically going to fall under multifamily. So by creating a new townhome category, this allows the council to consider that category that would just allow townhomes and would not allow other types of multifamily. So the purpose would be to have a category just specific to townhomes and providing a high quality housing with an urban walkable character. So you might recall that that you guys approved the changes to multifamily zoning to emulate the village zoning. So it's that urban form, it's a form-based code that's a walkable community. So we're proposing that would be exactly the same as it is today for a new townhome category. So it would encourage a variety of housing options for Kennedale residents, increase the tax base by development of vacant property not suitable for single family. And we do have some of that those transitional types of properties that make sense for townhomes. Enhance viability for retail development. Of course, rooftops help make retail possible, and respond to housing market and demand, which is, there's quite a bit of demand for townhomes. I think it does get a little bit confusing sometimes for some of the different categories, and I wanted to just kind of hit on the difference as it relates to properties that are townhomes versus duplex versus condo and that sort of thing. Of course, we all know what single family is, and the purple are parcels and the little black dots are units. And so, of course, we know what single family is: one lot, one house. A duplex is one lot with 2 units that are attached. But a townhome is different than a duplex, and I think a lot of people kind of mix those up. A townhome has an individual parcel that's owned by an individual, and each individual parcel has a unit on it, as opposed to a duplex, which has one parcel with 2 units. So townhomes are individually owned. One person owns each piece of property. Apartments, of course, you have one large piece of property with multiple units within that single parcel. And then condominiums are individually owned units, but typically an HOA owns and maintains the building. So that's a little bit different. Townhomes, the individual is typically going to own their individual building. So townhomes are being built in the Metroplex in response to market demand. It's a great product to use for, particularly when you have a smaller lot that perhaps you can put more units on in pockets and locations that make sense. So these are all images of local townhomes that have recently been built. And of course, we have one coming in Kennedale on Little School Road. That's Kennedale Square that was approved. So as I mentioned, the townhome regulations that we would propose are exactly what they are today. They would have, the lots would have a street or public space frontage. Primary structures would have to be street oriented. So in other words, they would face out rather than when you see, for example, apartments that are inward facing. These would face the street, and a range of forms and frontages are allowed. Sorry, this formatting kind of changed. So we would allow up to 3 stories, which is what it's allowed today. Maximum of setback of 30 feet. So that's a maximum rather than a minimum. So that's what gives you that urban form. Sorry, whoops. So this is a very important one that's in our code today for multifamily. No block face with a length greater than 300 feet without an alley or common drive. And the reason for that is that it allows for walkability. So you don't have these very, very long stretches of buildings. You're able to walk around the community. I'm sorry, the formatting just really messed up on this, but you should be able to see it in your packet. On-street and structured parking where possible is encouraged. No parking between the building facade and the back of the curb. So your building fronts the street. I can't even read this. Hopefully y'all can see this in your packet. In essence, this is the same building form that we have today in our multifamily and in our village zoning. So this is a good image of sort of the end result. This particular one is a 3-story development. You have on-street parking in this example, the sidewalks, the street trees, which would all be required. And the parking is in the rear, typically off of an alley. So that's kind of an overview of what we're proposing. I'm sorry? I'm sorry, was there a question?
No, I don't think there was.
Background interference.
Okay. Okay, sorry. So again, this is the same standards that we have today for townhomes in a nutshell. This would create just a separate category that would allow you to approve townhomes in TH that would be only for townhomes and not other types of multifamily. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions. So Leslie, do we have any speakers signed up?
Let me see. No one has said anything in the chat. Rosie, are you on? Rosie texted me. I believe John Havali is on the meeting and was wanting to speak on something, but I'm not positive it was this item or not. So I'm trying to figure that out for us before we close this public hearing or before. And Rosie was trying to help me contact him.
He wants to speak on the budget.
Oh, he wants to speak on the budget. Okay. So I don't believe we have any speakers on this item.
Okay, let's close out the public hearing. Any of the council have any comments on it? Well, let's open back up the regular session. Does any of the council have any comments?
A question. Is there a max number of units per acre on these?
No, it's a form-based code. So basically the number of units is going to be dictated by the land and the layout requirements.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone have a motion?
Chris is talking, his mic's muted.
I'll make a motion that we approve case PZ 20-06 as presented.
And I second that motion. Leslie, will you take roll on this one?
Yes, I will. And Josh Altham is still not with us on this call, correct?
Right.
So Chris Pugh,
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Lee,
Yay.
Linda Rhodes,
Nay.
nay, and then Chad Wandell.
Yes.
So if I heard the votes correctly, we have 3, 4, and 1 against.
All right.
So the motion would pass.
Motion passed. Hey, Drew, can we let John Havale speak?
Well, that's within your discretion. And we've already considered the budget item. We've already talked about it. So that's, Councilmember Lee, that's within your discretion whether or not you want to allow that to happen.
That was a work session item, I think.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great evening.
Okay.